Our next speaker is Glenn Gutek. Glenn is the founder of Awake Consulting and Coaching, an organization devoted to helping professionals wake up and lead in the direction of excellence. With a variety of resources, Awake Consulting and Coaching has the ability to create a profitable business that serves clients, customers, staff, employees, and owners with enjoyment and excellence. Later this month, Glenn's new book, Wake Up Call, will be released. So now please give it up for Mr. Glenn Gutek.
I'd like you to start by considering this, that you live in a world that is thoroughly committed to your mediocrity. You live in a world that is thoroughly committed to your mediocrity. Let me illustrate it this way. 10 years ago, my wife and I bought our house. And, we have 4 children. At the time, they were ages 12 to 2. And we decided that they would flourish in the overflow of our connection. If mama's happy, the kids are going to be happy. So in our bedroom, we built a sitting area, put 2 wingback chairs there, and our thought was we could sit down there at least once a day, and we would connect. And if we had a good connection, then the kids would flourish in that. And it was amazing to us that the second we sat down and we started talking to one another, it was like the Vatican sending a smoke signal out into the universe, because kids would come out of the woodwork. They could be down the street playing with kids, and they would somehow end up on our lap, interrupting our conversation and making it about them. Even our own children will not act in their own best interest. And then let me illustrate it maybe this way. When I was really young, about 7 or 8 years old, I started playing basketball. I got connected with a group of kids that were very talented, and I had the really interesting fortune of playing with a very competitive basketball team for a lot of years. And we would go off to summer camps, and we would do very well. And so I started to believe around age 13 or 14 that I was going to be a professional basketball player. And you'd go out to dinner with your parents, and your parents' friends would ask you the question, what are you going to do when you grow up? And the first answer I would come up with is I was going to be a professional basketball player. And didn't know that when I was 13 or 14, 5'7", that was the last inch I would grow in my entire life, but that was my fantasy, that was my dream. Now the second I would say that, my parents would say this, yes, but you have to go to school and you have to get a good education. Now it was sound advice, and I appreciate it all these years later, but understand this. What my parents were doing was really protecting me while also kind of watering down a dream. And 13 and 14-year-old boys are supposed to have ridiculously big dreams, aren't they? You live in a world that's committed to your mediocrity. They were doing something with love and good intent, but it was actually having some negative consequences at that time in my life. So for those of you who are entrepreneurs, I would make this assertion, that your customers and your clients want you to lead a team with excellence. They want you to lead them well. They want your policies and procedures to be well-oiled. They want you to create systems and processes that are great machines, that the end result is that the service or product that you produce is loved and valued and at a great price. But if you believe the Pareto principle, 80% of the clients will do absolutely nothing to assist you in the process to lead your business well. In fact, they will act in a way that is contrary to their own best interest, because you live in a world that is committed to your mediocrity. So for about 14 years, we started a company because we were fascinated with the interplay between entrepreneurship and psychology. And one of the areas that we became fascinated with is the life stories of entrepreneurs. And eventually, our team noticed that there were events that cropped up in the life of entrepreneurs that had the same event had very different impact. For some, the event had a way of calcifying their commitment to mediocrity. When you listened to their life story and you heard their excuses of why their business is flatlined, they would point to an event that happened in their life. Now that same event in the life of another entrepreneur served to catapult them in a whole new direction. And so as coaches, one of the things that we began to do is to say, okay, we'll talk about your systems and your marketing, but somewhere along the line, we got to look at your leadership, and we got to look at the events that have shaped your leadership and unpack how you've interpreted them, because no doubt they've impacted the way you lead and the culture and the team that you have. And so we talk about events and interpretation and impact. And there's this, one effect that all entrepreneurs have to deal with, and it's how they deal with success, especially initial success. What would you do if I told you that one of the most dangerous times in an entrepreneur and an executive and in a leader's life is right after their first taste of success? Because that success can be interpreted in a variety of ways. For some, initial success actually changes their entire mindset, and they become focused on preserving and protecting what they've created. while in the mind of others, success becomes a platform that they dive off of. And you can see this in their lives. I'm always fascinated with how this shows up in population and geographic movement. But, you know, in 1849, there was a movement west. There was a gold rush in the city of San Francisco. Tons of people flooded the area. And today, as of just recently, the San Francisco Giants are the World Series champions. In the late 1890s, there was another gold rush in Alaska, the Klondike Gold Rush. And Jack London, who is a writer of this period of time, estimates that in the city of Dyea, Alaska, there were over 150 new businesses established. And within a short period of time, $220 million was infused into that area and that region. And by 1903, the city of Dyea, Alaska had a population of 3. In one city, that kind of business development becomes the platform that we now recognize one of this country's greatest cities. In another area, and maybe climate had a little bit to do with it, but it couldn't have so much that it was a complete bust. So initial success has an incredible and profound way in which it affects you. Entrepreneurs and executives are obviously motivated people. I think entrepreneurs tend to be very optimistic people. They tend to buy into what I call the Doris Day worldview. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. They generally think that the things that happen in life generally do happen. It all works out in the end. When I was in high school, I must have dated these people because they would write you Dear Glenn letters and break up with you. And the tagline was, if you love something, set it free. If it comes back to you, it was meant to be. And so entrepreneurs tend to be somewhat optimists, but not in this room. In other rooms, maybe not even on this campus, they're pessimists. The stars are continuously aligned for their demise. The Murphy's Law kind of people. That which can go wrong will go wrong. And so one of the things that sometimes happens in the aftermath of success is that you will end up going into one of those two camps. And I would assert again that you have to be careful because the forces around you sometimes work at holding you static. They're not going to destroy you, but they certainly aren't going to promote you. And so how do you navigate success is really important. So what drives you? What drives you? Are established, and we move, and we develop, and we grow, and we mature because oftentimes there's unmet needs in our life. And tragically, most of the people that you will encounter, once they figure out that their most basic needs are met, that's where they stop growing and developing. The optimists in this room tend to be driven a little bit more, and just having your needs met isn't enough. And I believe that many, many entrepreneurs are highly motivated by trying to have certain fears avoided. When I talk to most, it's not that they're worried about their needs being met. They believe that there's some beast chasing after them, and they have to move harder and faster to keep the beast away from them. And tragically, that becomes a success plateau for a lot of them. That is the point in which they then shift their mindset, and they realize, okay, my worst fears aren't going to come. I've survived this long. I'm going to hit a plateau. And others, it's not enough that they realize that the fears aren't going to be avoided, but they like to have their needs somewhat exceeded. There's some sort of desire, some sort of symbol of success that they've been chasing after, and they chase after that. And then they get that symbol of success, and that's where they hit the success plateau. I think that there are greater goals to be motivated by, but the tragedy is that the initial taste of success becomes the force of mediocrity for so many. And you have to ask this question, how do I get off the success plateau? What I would say is that in life there are certain wake-up calls. And one of the wake-up calls sometimes when you're on a success plateau is you're bored. When leaders are bored, it's a really tragic thing. When leaders are bored, they generally do stupid stuff. Obviously, when you lose market share and you realize, okay, my profits are shrinking, that's an area where you begin to realize, okay, that's a wake-up call. I may have been floating on a success plateau. I think another area where entrepreneurs tend to recognize that they're on a success plateau is when they're easily distracted. But the question is how do you get off the success plateau? And I think that there are a variety of principles to help you in this one area. I just want to focus on one principle for a moment. I think the most important thing to do to get off a success plateau is to make a shift from a focus on results to a focus on process. Leaders are definitely results driven, but the initial success is I've got results. I got what I wanted. I got what I want to look for. See, I'm successful. I got the results. But there was a whole series of processes that drove those results, and those are really critical. And so to get off the success plateau, you got to stop being enamored with results and start being enamored with the process that had helped you be successful. I want to just close with this. Tennessee Williams was a playwright, Glass Menagerie, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Right after he was successful, he wrote an essay in New York Times called The Catastrophe of Success. And in it, he believed that creative people, brains, needed internal conflict. And once that internal conflict was satisfied, he described them as people who have become swords cutting at daisies. You want to know what motivates me? There is nothing more tragic than watching a capable, competent executive or entrepreneur become a sword cutting at a daisy. Thank you.